Hey my quilty friends, thanks for clicking on the thumbnail. In this video I'm going to show you how to make candy corn coasters using up your scraps. It's such a fun little project to make for fall and they make fantastic gifts. Let me show you how. You can find a copy of these cutting instructions over on my website. I'll put a link in the description below. So we'll start off with our 3 pieces that measure 2.5 inches by 6.5 inches. Now traditionally candy corn is white, orange and yellow. So I've gone through my stash and found the best fabrics for me to make this project. You can use any fabrics you want, but those are the traditional colours. So then all we're going to do is decide in what order we'd like to sew them in, and then we're just going to sew them together. So I'm just going to take this top one, place it right sides on the second, line up the edges, pin and sew. So I'll sew along this edge, then I'll do exactly the same for the third piece. I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've got my 1/4 inch foot on here. I'm going to stitch at stitch length 2.5. I'm using wonderful confetti thread, and I'm just going to start at the very edge and then sew along all the way to the bottom. Removing my pins as I need to, coming off the edge, cutting my thread, and now I'll just sew my third piece on. So now we're going to press our seams. It's just a craft project, so it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to press them all going down. So just making sure that seam's facing towards me and pressing, and the same with the second one. Finger pressing and pressing. I'll just give the whole piece a once over. Now what I'm going to do is turn it over so that the wrong side is facing me. Take my fusible fleece, and the side that's got the bumps on it, that's the glue. I'm going to face that down on the wrong side. I'm going to just line up all the edges and then press. I'm going to flip it over to the other side and do the same on this side. Okay, now we'll move on to the next step. So now I'm going to take my candy corn coaster template, and you can get a copy of this for free over on my website, and I'll put a link down in the description below. Or you could just draw your own candy corn template that you're happy with. Then what we're going to do is place it on our front and our back piece and draw around it so we've got a guide to cut out our shape. So I'm just placing it on the right side because I just like to check I'm happy with how it's sitting. And for example, I've got some cute little hearts there. I just want to make sure I'm going to catch them in my coaster, so you can have a little play with how it's sitting. Then I'm going to take a washable marker, but we're not going to see it, so you could really use anything you'd like. And I'm just going to carefully go around the template. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same on the backing. You could do it on the right or the wrong side of the fabric. It really doesn't matter because we're just using it as our guide to cut. And then when I'm finished, I'm just going to cut them out carefully along the drawn line. Then once we've got both of our pieces cut out, I'm going to place them right sides together, line up all the edges the best I can. It's going to be a little bit rough because we just hand cut that. Take my pins and then just pin it in place. I like to put them in like this because as we sew around the edge, they're not going to get in the way. Now what we're going to do is, like I just said, we're going to sew around the edge, but we are going to leave an opening of about 2 or 3 inches. And if you'd like, you could take your marker and just mark it if you will forget to do that. So now I know to start here, go all the way around and finish here. And we will do a back stitch just because when we turn it right sides out, it does tend to pull at those stitches. So starting at that first mark, again, I'm going to be stitching with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll go forward a few stitches and then do a back stitch, And now I'm just going to go all the way around, just going nice and slow around those corners. And if I can't quite make it, I'll just stop, lift my foot up and just turn it a little bit, do a stitch, do the same and just turn it just to get around that corner. Coming back up to that second marking, doing a back stitch, and then cutting my thread, removing our pins, and then moving on to the next step. I'm just going to trim that loose thread, and then what we're going to do is just snip the corners so that when we turn it right sides out it's sitting really nicely. So you can just carefully snip little notches like that, and I would do 3 on this top corner or point, being careful not to cut our stitches. Or because this is just a simple little craft, we could just cheat and just sort of cut off the corner like that. We're just trying to cut off that excess. So whichever way you prefer. Then what we're going to do is turn it right sides out. So I'm going to find my opening, put my fingers in, grab that top point, then hold on to it and then pull it through. And then I'm going to get it sitting the best I can. And now I'm just going to take my point turner. So I've got this beautiful point turner, and now I'm just going to pop it in and just make sure all the edges are sitting really nicely. If you don't have a point turner, you could use something blunt like a chopstick. Just be careful that you don't push too hard and make a hole in the fabric, which is easy to do. So once we've got it sitting really nicely, I'm going to give that another press. So the first thing I'm going to do is just press this opening here. So I'm going to fold those edges in about 1/4 inch because that was our seam allowance, and get it sitting really nicely. And then when I'm happy that it is sitting nicely, I'll give that a press. And then I'm just going to check that on the other side. I'll give it a press on this side. And then I'm just going to press the whole thing. I'm going to roll out these edges, making sure that they're sitting really nicely. Okay, I'll give the whole thing a press. Now what I'm going to do is I will just pop in a couple of pins just to hold it in place for when I sew it, and I'm going to pop it in right in where it begins so I know where to stop. And if I wanted to, I could put another pin here, but I think that's going to be fine. Now we're going to sew our top stitch, and I'm going to do that with about a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm using my left compensating foot, which just means I can put it down there and then butt up my coaster against that ledge there, and it just gives me a really nice stitch. And that's on my Juki TL sewing machine. Some other brands have something similar. I'm sorry, I don't know what they're called. I can put the link for this one down below, and if you've got a different type of machine, perhaps you could look up or just Google left compensating foot for Juki to whatever your sewing machine is. So what I'm going to do is start where my opening is. Oh, I'm going to move back a little bit, starting right where that opening begins. And I'm not going to worry about a back stitch because I'll do a back stitch when we come back over the top of it, removing my pin as it gets in the way. And just carefully following the shape of my coaster, and I'm just going to take my time going around this corner. You're always going to get the best results if you just take your time. It's not we don't have to rush or speed. Okay, and then when we're on the straight we can go a little bit faster. Sorry if my hands are in the way. So just taking my time again. I'm just going to hold on to the tail of the thread, otherwise it could end up in a big bird's nest, and I'm going to stitch right past where we started. and then I will do a back stitch. And did I mention I changed my stitch length to stitch length 3? I just personally think it's nicer to be slightly longer when it's more of a decorative stitch like our top stitch. Now, if you'd like to, you could be finished, or you can quilt it however you like. What I'm going to do is a stitch in the ditch. I'm just going to sew right along next to those seams. I'm going to change my foot because it's a little bit hard with this foot on. If you're enjoying this video, please do subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss out on another video. It really helps me out and I appreciate it so much. So I just cut all the loose threads, then I'm just going to give it a once over with my iron, just so it's all sitting really nicely. And there we have it, our candy corn coaster. Isn't that just super cute? The candy corn coasters make great gifts. I made up this little gift basket and I made this cute little candy corn stuffy. All I did was make the template bigger, and then instead of doing our decorative stitch around the end and quilting, I opened it up and stuffed it with stuffing and then sewed it closed. You can find a copy of how to make all of this in my pattern. I'll put a link down below, including my cute little gift cards. If you did want to make your coasters a little bit more protective of the surface that they're going on, you could add Insulbright, which is a special batting that does deal with heat. And if you like this project and you're looking for other fall projects to sew, I'll put my playlist up above. I've got a whole heap of videos you might like to check out. Thanks for watching till the very end. I really appreciate you.